Okay, you guys can probably see me now. It looks like we were not live. I am so sorry. I just spoke to myself for about 15 minutes. Okay, we got some people here now. Thank God. All right. Wow, I had no idea that we were not live, and I was just talking for 15 minutes about this whole thing. I'm sure that I wonder if the restream of this later will show all the things I just discussed, but I suppose I will start off the top again. So, hello, Matt. Hello, Angel. Thank you for the concerns. I'm sorry you didn't text me earlier. I just spoke for like a while, but it's really great to see everybody here. I hope everyone's doing well. We're just going to jump right in since I waited originally for a few people in the beginning and then I started, but this time around it looks like we have some people right away. So if you're here, feel free to say hello in the chat. I'm here at 2D House. My name is David, and I've got Mike with me. He's just over here helping me out with some stuff, and he's also going to be our talent for today. Here's Mike. We're both here at 2D. We're going to go over some of the basics of motion control, and in this video we're really going to cover multipass and the values that multipass has and sort of the ability to use it, what benefit it has, and sort of all the different things you need to keep track of and consider when doing multipass. So some of the things I want to talk about. Oh, you got a hi mic from Cine in the Six, which is Barry Chong, a DP in Toronto. So Mike says hi, Barry. He sees you. He hears you. Things that we are going to cover are starting with considerations for multipass. So we have our Milo over here, and it's going to go to its first position. But when we're doing motion control and we're really thinking about multipass, we want to make sure we have a lot of constant variables in mind. And those constant variables are starting with the camera sync is one of the most fundamental things. So speaking to the camera and making sure that we're synced is really important, because if the robot starts moving when the camera is not synced, then you can shoot multiple passes, but they're not actually going to be in line with each other. They could be as far off as half a frame off, forward or behind, compared to each other. And so having your camera and robot speak to each other is one of the most basic fundamentals of motion control. We're going to demonstrate this later after we shoot some stuff by shooting without sync. But for now, just really keep in mind that camera sync is one of the most important things. Your art and your subject are equally really important. If you're trying to match cut something and your set moves or your art moves or your subject moves, anything, it's not going to line up anymore. And that's a really big problem. By the way, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to comment. We do have some comments that I can see here. And if you at 2D House, I'll definitely see them because they'll pop up red for me. But the next really important thing is lighting. And this is one of the really, really important things, I would say almost second to sync, is your lighting. It may seem simple enough, just keep your lights on and pointed in the same place, but if you're working with certain kind of lights, you may experience some shadows or casting of shadows onto other parts of your frame that you're not really cognizant of normally because you're not doing multipass normally. But if a shadow lands on another piece of the art or the set and then you do a multipass, you're going to see a difference there if that thing is no longer casting the same shadow. And so you want to be really, really cognizant. Your DP should be really aware, ideally have some experience with multipass and how those shadows play. You don't want to have different parts of your composition end up affecting parts that are really valuable later. This kind of also brings to mind the importance of a clean pass. Shooting a clean pass multiple times throughout your project ensures that you kind of have something to rely on just in case there is a mishap or a, oh, we got a hello from Mexico. Oh, and a programmer for, here it goes, and a programmer for the Bold. Hi, hello. Eduardo, very welcome, nice to see you. So you know how frustrating Flare can be. The idea here is to really ensure that that clean pass covers you in the sense of oh no, we screwed up, and now we don't know if we're gonna be able to put together everything. And you don't want to make things too much of a nightmare for your VFX supervisor. So clean pass, really important. Another part of lighting is actually that you may be dealing with some lighting that's out of your control, like street lamps or sunsets. And that's one of the reasons why we don't do too much multipass outdoors unless you're planning on using a green screen or rotoing out your subject and then putting in your subject in another sort of background. Generally speaking, multipass outdoors is a nightmare because any tiny change in lighting and these two shots don't match anymore. Big problem. So the last thing we'll talk about, which is not really a consideration, is audio. So while audio obviously is a very important part of filmmaking, because the robot, first of all, makes noise, and because you're shooting multipass, I don't think we've ever experienced a time where we've recorded live audio that's ended up being in the shot. I'm only bringing it up to mention it because it is part of filmmaking, and we don't want to ignore it. Unfortunately, audio is not a very significant factor for us, so we're not really going to concern ourselves too much with it. Now, as far as the Milo goes, we've got a Milo here, and I'll have Mike, we're actually repeating the first 15 minutes. Mike, if you don't mind giving us a view of the Milo, we're going to show you what our setup is like so you guys have an idea. And as we prepare to actually shoot some moves, I'll discuss a little bit of one factor. If Mike gets in really tight, oh, let me switch this up. You can see we've got here, Mike, it's a little dim. Are you able to just boost up either ISO there, gain, or something for us? Give him just a second. So something I want to discuss is consistency with the lens and the hardware. Things like your camera. I can't actually see yet. A little brighter still if you can. Thank you, that's great. So your camera, your lens, everything really matters. And if you're changing these up between your two shots, you're gonna end up having something be off. We're shooting today with an LF Mini and a 47mm signature prime. However, you'll notice that we're motored on both focus and on iris. And the reason that's important is you're never gonna match the iris again. I've run into this problem firsthand where I thought I knew what T-stop I was on. I tried to manually get back there, and of course we were off. And we had to do a little bit of nightmare work in post to make it work. Thank you, Mike, appreciate that. And a factor that needs to be considered is the hardware, because if you're shooting with a 24mm ultra prime and shooting with whatever, an Alexa Mini, and then a 24mm master prime and a Red Epic, your two shots obviously for color are not going to match, but composition, everything are not going to match at all. We got another question here. We are not using Flare 7. That's a good question. We are using Flare 6. Here's a shot of our setup right now. Flare 7, just for us, has not been as reliable as I would have hoped. So we're going to be continuing to use Flare 6. Thank you for the question. Please keep the questions coming. Angel is a DP in Toronto who we've shot with recently. And we have sorted out that issue with the Milo there, Angel. The real issue was that we had just recently gotten our Milo, and I don't think we had confidently tested out the Mini yet. So now that we have, I've had some time, obviously, in quarantine here, we are shooting with the LF Mini. That is a Watson, yes. Thank you. Oh, we got Kevin here as well. Thank you for recognizing Watson. Let's proceed. So I think I was just discussing the gear. Hello, Bob, also from Toronto. We got a lot of Torontonians here. A couple of people from Mexico so far that I've seen, but please continue to say hello. We'll get you guys commented on this on the stream. What I was just discussing was hardware and consistency. So yeah, obviously the extreme example of a Red and a Master Prime and a Mini and an Ultra Prime, they're not going to match. Even a Mini and an Ultra Prime and a different Mini and an Ultra Prime may not match. Things like lenses can be really finicky when it comes to that, and there's characteristics that each individual lens has. So while you're probably going to be okay with using the same hardware from different sources, the actual identical hardware is definitely the best thing. It's a nice combo, I have to admit. It is a really handy thing. Got someone from Northern Ontario, Mutualist. Oh, you're very welcome. This is our first live stream, so everyone please be gentle. Hopefully there's not going to be too many blunders, but I expect that there will be. So today we're going to be shooting some multipass. Mike is going to be our talent, and we're going to try and really illustrate a lot of the key aspects, the key considerations in multipass. Before we get too far in, I'm going to just show, it's going to be a little choppy, but I'm going to show a video that we shot of the LF Mini. We shot this with the red, however. And this is also up on our YouTube channel, and this is just really to demo multipass. We want people to really appreciate, this is one of many uses of multipass, and this is 69 passes that were merged together in post, and very little rotoing, if at all, was done on this. This was just repeat pass. We shot this on the bolts. It's nice and slow, which means the bolts, while not the ideal tool, was able to handle it quite well. And this is just one of the many ways you can use multipass. So we're not going to watch the whole thing. This video, like I said, is on our YouTube channel, and it is also linked over in the description. So feel free to have a look there. I got another comment here. Bob, thank you. I cut my own hair. It's very bad. Please, don't be too harsh. Kevin, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. It is that was a fun one to make. Multipass is really fun to edit. It's so easy to edit because you just cut things. You don't have to roto things out. Yes, actually, that's a very good question. The question is if we can shoot things midway. We're going to demonstrate that. That's part of the thing we're going to try and demonstrate in a moment or two. So yes, the answer in short is we can do part runs, and the camera stays synced, which is nice because otherwise it wouldn't work. And we will continue on to, wait, I don't know, I lost my train of thought. Yes, and we will demo that soon. All right, so if I go over to my Flare software, you guys can have a look here at what I look at when we're dealing with this sort of thing. So this is the move that we're going to illustrate in a moment, and I'll play it out for you guys once here. We're going to have Mike play some rock, paper, scissors. He's going to do that, and there's going to be 3 of him. And we'll show you the process of shooting it and all the other little bits in order to get something out of multipass. So it's not a very complicated move. In fact, I'm already a little bit bored, so we will stop watching that right now. And we'll get this thing into its first position. Oh, it is already in first position. And that's what the Milo sees. That's the dog right there. And we want to record our clean pass. So we're going to have to get that dog out of there. I'll have Mike just move Watson for us. He's here, but in our way. So we're going to start with a clean pass. And it's really important that we make sure we do this frequently and in the beginning and in the end. I also will just adjust our lighting to be what it's going to be when we shoot. So got some lights changing here for us. And we're going to go ahead. We're going to shoot this thing. This is our clean pass. And another thing to note that I'll come back to, actually, no, you know what, I'll show you guys now, is right here, if you look, this is where my sync indicator is. On the Alexa Mini, sync only sort of kicks in when you're rolling. So, oh, we're losing our connection. It's gone down quite a bit. You guys should still, I've got an error on my end. Can anyone just let me know that you're still here? I've got a very low data. Okay, thank you, Owen. We are still here. I got one comment. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so we have got sync right here. Is not here right now, but I'm gonna kick this thing to record, and as I run this thing, you'll see that the numbers end up popping up here, and indeed the camera does turn over and the robot is speaking. So we're gonna shoot on 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I lied. The numbers did not show up, but we are synced. I do have a sync. Oddly enough, even though that we've dropped sync, we are still synced. We are still, the camera itself is synced, and we just need that first moment. Oh, my Milo is actually acting up here. We have a roll issue, so I'm gonna stop this. And I'm going to make sure I turn roll level and head level. That should have stayed as a setting earlier. We're going to go back to 1. And I'm going to show you guys the actual robot moving. So we'll shoot that clean pass one more time. Rest assured, even though if it drops there, the sync has connected in the start and it is going. So we're going to record this one more time. This is our clean pass. It's about 30 seconds. And again, the value of this is just to ensure that if we have to remove something or edit something, of course, we have a lot of problems. So one of the very interesting parts of Flare, folks, is you get a lot of errors. So roll level turned off due to sudden stop. And oh look, 5 axes have gone out of jig. Okay, so we're gonna turn on some axes. This is a sadly normal part. I'm actually still fairly new to working with the Milo, so sometimes we get these issues. We got our axes back on. I thought I had turned that to level. Apparently I didn't. Maybe I missed the go-to earlier. We're gonna have to do that one more time. I think the Milo is gonna crash into the couch, so I'm gonna have to go to one of the end positions here. And then go to our ones. Oh great, our stream is back to full health. That was good. It was down a very low bit rate for a little while there. Okay, and now from here we're going to go to ones. And hopefully we have a functioning robot and we can do our clean pass. If there are any questions, please just let me know. Again, I'm going to try and comment as much as I can. If you want to ask a question directly, make sure to just at 2D House. Here we go, one more time. Fingers crossed, ready to shoot. 1, 2, 3. So we're synced. And if you notice, when I click, I don't know, you can't really see or hear my click probably, but when I click, there's a moment before the robot starts. That moment is the robot reading the frame rate of the camera and waiting to a new frame before it starts. So what happens is, as the camera's just on, it's always counting, and the robot doesn't want to move until a new frame freshly starts. And so for that reason, it can be sometimes hard to time actions with multipass, because when you're synced, you can't just hit go on the Milo. When I hit go, it doesn't move right away. Okay, so we have successfully recorded our clean pass. We're gonna have Mike come in. He's gonna put on a hoodie and sit on the couch for us. And say hello to Mike, everybody.
Hello.
And he's gonna be a bystander of a rock, paper, scissors game that he's eventually gonna play later on. Thank you, Josh, from Toronto again. That's a good question. So the question is, what happens when this thing kind of goes out of step? If it goes out of step and you've lost your fundamental sort of position, you're going to have to re-zero it. And you have to do that. You have to tell it to re-zero itself. It's not going to just do it on its own, unfortunately. But there are methods with which to re-zero, and it's a very, very common thing, unfortunately, that we re-zero. You also want to re-zero every time you power cycle the robot. So if you have done anything like come back another day, well, you're going to have to re-zero it because you have no reference point. And if anything has moved in those days, you're really going to suffer some terrible consequences, unfortunately. Justin, you are very welcome. There's going to be a lot of errors because this is completely live and this is part of the nature of working with these robots, but we will hopefully persevere through all of them. All right, so we've got this robot not pointing at Mike yet. We're going to go back to our ones. Now, it's very important also to realize I'm not changing any of these settings. These are staying the same. If I did, then we're not going to have the same shot anymore. So this is going to be Mike playing rock, paper, scissors. He's kind of, the idea we're trying to shoot here is he's watching two more of him playing rock, paper, scissors. So this is the bystander shot. And this shot, we're going to shoot the whole thing, but we only really need the first half. But for the sake of consistency, we're going to shoot the whole thing. So I'm about ready to shoot. Mike, I'm just going to give you an action. You know what to do, right, Mike? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to roll this again on 3, and you'll notice, and I'll say as soon as I hit it, and you guys can see the little bit of a delay between when I say it and when the camera actually starts rolling. That's because the robot is looking for a fresh frame. So we're going to go right on 3. 1, 2, 3. It wasn't much, but it was about, 10 frames. And that's enough by all means. Even one frame, even half a frame is enough to make these two shots that we're going to put together out of sync. So obviously there's no more talent in this. This is just making sure we have more, more is better than none, or less. So if the opportunity and the time allows to shoot the whole pass, you should do that. If it's a long pass, this is kind of long, 33 seconds or so, then we might want to actually reshoot it with only doing part moves. Thank you, Mike. If you want to take off the hoodie and get into position B, Mike and I have already actually done this yesterday just to confirm it's going to work. So B is the left one, yeah.
That's this outfit.
Yeah. So I think Owen had a question earlier about part moves. And because this move is not crazy long, you could start the whole thing. But this move, you'll see here where Mike is standing, he doesn't come into the shot until about a quarter into the move. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go back into flare here, and we're going to do a part move. And we're going to do that part move from frame 220 to the end. And so I'm going to hit part run. It's going to go to that starting point. Give you back that view. And you'll see he's not going to be in frame when we start. And the same thing happens. The Milo will look for sync with the camera. When it finds a new frame, it's going to start moving. And one thing to note is that with this part move, I believe the Milo needs to ramp up into it because it can't instantly accelerate. So when I hit go, it's actually going to go backward for a second and then speed back in to its move. So we'll have another view of the Milo here. And I'll give you guys that view. So on 3, we're going to shoot this, and it'll be a few seconds before Mike's in frame. 1, 2, 3. So it moved back a bit and then moved forward. Oh, why were we back? Okay, that was another error. We were back running for some reason, so that went backwards. We are going to kind of get back into position here. This couch is in our way, so in order to get into position, I'm actually running through the move a little bit. And I'll stop it about here. For some reason, we went backwards. Sorry, Mike. I guess you heard that, but we went backwards. And I'm going to do this part move one more time. Stay on top. Why'd you go backwards? Oh, right. Okay. So that was because I told it to go backwards. Ha 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 ha. So that's 800 is our final frame here. Oh, sorry. No, not you. This was set to 0. This doesn't really matter for you guys if you're not flare operators, but just so you guys know what I'm doing. This was set to 0, and what I should have done is set it to 800. So now the part run should work properly. We're going to part run again. We're going to go to our first position. And ready to shoot, Mike. 1, 2, 3. So it goes back, and then it goes forward because it can't move instantly. But this part run is going to sync perfectly along with everything else we've done. So he's playing rock, paper, scissors with a phantom version of himself. He's done this yesterday with me as a test, and he did a really good job. So it's not as easy as it looks, to be honest. Perfect. That's our move. We've stopped. The robot has stopped recording, and everything is great. Okay, so we have another question here. Let me just get that question up. Oh. So, are you able to use a bloop light in order to be more accurate on every pass when making composite? This is something that we'll discuss more heavily when we are talking with high speed. The answer is yes. There is a bloop light that we have that we can put in the frame, and it fires at a specific moment on every shot. The reason that we're not using it right now is because we're also doing part moves. And if we're doing part moves, then you have to really be cognizant of when you put that bloop light in. If you put it in the beginning and then do a part move of only the second half, of course that bloop is no longer in the shot. And the same thing happens if you do it at the end. And then the other question is, do you put the bloop light in both the end and the beginning? But because it needs to be in frame, it can be troublesome. But more fundamentally, sync just doesn't work when you're doing live action at live action speed. And because of that, the bloop is kind of irrelevant. You need to be synced. You need to comp those two shots together. When you're shooting high speed, sync doesn't matter as much anymore. So all of a sudden, you need the bloop light because you have no real reference. After 500 frames, flare can't even sync anymore, and even at that speed, it has errors. So the reality is the bloop light has value. To me, it's mostly at high speed, and at live action, we want to really rely on syncing the camera properly. But that's a very good question. Here's another question from Josh. Can you have Flare play back an audio file to help talent synchronize their actions? Yes. So you can do this indirectly. Flare has a lot of communication ports, and this is probably something we'll touch base more on in another video, but we can plug in inputs or outputs into Flare, a bunch of them. And we've done this with squibs, especially with the bolts. We've had people firing squibs, and the squibs need to be fired. We had Flare control those squibs because a human wouldn't be as accurate as we needed to be because of how fast the move was. We shot, it was like a 1 second clip at 1,000 frames per second. You know, a human can't go click, click, click when you're looking at 3 different things in that period of time. But you can play back a lot of things with Flare. The best thing, though, is to plan that in advance. If you ask me that on the day, the answer is no. But if you told me that a week before, a couple of days before, then I would prepare it and we would be ready to go. Good question, Josh. Thank you. So, to summarize, we have shot 3 passes now: a clean pass, a pass with Mike sitting, and a pass with Mike standing. For the sake of expediency, we're not going to shoot the 3rd pass, but Mike, if you'll just stand where you would be in the 3rd position. So this is where he would have been for the 3rd pass. I'm going to show you the final footage, though. Imagine we shot that. I just don't want to waste everyone's time. All right, so you guys ready to see how this thing came out? We are going to just switch over. I'm going to give you back this view for a second while I prepare the video. Or before I do that, actually, we have one more question. Let me just read this. Good question. Okay. So before we move on, I'll just try and answer this. The question is essentially, normally you don't touch these settings, and then is there ever a reason you might want to? Yeah, I definitely would say so. If you're trying to comp in multiple shots and you shoot the first one on a green screen, for instance, you might want to have your ISO be different, for example, because in your slate that you're going to shoot afterwards, you might need to boost that. A more elaborate example would be if you shoot multiple speeds on the camera. So you can shoot the same move at different speeds. We have done this a few times with the bolt. I guess it's pretty dark, so you can't see the bolt, but we've done this a few times with the bolt, where you'll shoot something at 24 frames per second, and that's talent moving through an environment. But then you'll shoot the same thing much, much faster, maybe at 300 or 400 frames per second, in which case you might want to adjust your shutter angle, because you might not want that motion blur to match when you comp those 2 shots together. You might have somebody walking super fast through an environment, which we have done. So there are instances in which you want to play with those settings. It's really on a specific basis, and whenever those things crop up, you have to think creatively how you're going to solve that problem. Can you light it differently, maybe, or do you want to use the iris? But if you use the iris, now if you're matching parts of the same shot, your bokeh won't match anymore. So you have to be really careful with that. But that was a good question. Thank you very much, Christian. All right, we're going to move on to Owen has dropped another big question, and we'll get back to that in a second. Owen, thank you. I'm going to show you guys the final video. So I'm just going to switch here for a second, and then I will switch over to the final video that we shot with Mike. So, oh, my question thing is still there. Oh, I screwed that up. Okay, so this is the video. We've got Mike playing rock, paper, scissors, and he's watching 2 more Mikes play rock, paper, scissors. And frankly, this was a really easy video to comp together because of the way we shot it. You know, we deliberately didn't have anybody overlap with themselves. So, or mic overlap with himself. And therefore, putting these all together was quite easy. It's an important thing to consider when you're planning these. If people cross over themselves in the image, you're going to need to roto that out or something. So that was that video. I'll just pop that back there. That video as well as the LF video are both in the the description of this video. So if you want to see that, it's on an unlisted YouTube link. You can check that out. I've also dropped the raw footage if you want to try editing those comp shots. I'm going to go into the edit right now so you guys have a sense of what that looks like. Here is sort of an edit, and actually right now we're on a different portion that I want to show you. But if we scroll all the way back to the front here, we have our 3 mics, and we have the video. And I just want to give you guys an idea of how well these comp together. So over here, we have just one mic and a clean pass. And I'm going to turn off the mic. And you can see the couch cushion moves a little bit because he's sitting on it, but otherwise, it's just remarkable how these 2 shots line up. And this is what makes this tool so powerful. This is such a tremendous use when these moments are captured and they're exactly the same way. Not a lot of machines can do this. The Milo, again, is the better tool than the Bolt because it's more stable and more precise. But the Bolt can do this at slow motion as well, at slower speeds, I should say. But yeah, this is just so easy. And, you know, we can use the bloop, but I find the best way, here's a ghost mic, and again, this can be turned off and on. I find the best way to find out if the footage matches is simply to lower the opacity and move the clip around, you know, a couple frames. You'll see right here along the lines, these no longer match, and as we progress through there, it just kind of gets a little blurry because there's 2 layers on top of each other. And that's a good way of knowing when your clips match up. Now, importantly, something that I wanted to discuss is that idea of sync. you got an Oscar-worthy performance there, Mike, from Kevin. Thank you very much, Kevin. That was actually really hard to shoot because playing rock, paper, scissors against yourself in precise timing is not as easy as we would all think. And Owen, I haven't forgotten about you. I'll get to your question in a moment as well. All right. What was I about to say? So we have an example here of why sync is really important. So if we were not synced, then the reality is, here's an example. We shot this out of sync. It's really subtle, but you have clips that just don't line up. And you can see right there on that leg of the stand, this clip has no home in comparison to the other clips. So there's a 50% crop on this. So we're only looking at half that frame. And there's no way for me to match that up. I can go 1 frame earlier, I can go 1 frame behind, but it won't sync up. And that's just half a frame off. So if you're trying to make these shots work, you gotta be synced. The bloop at this speed doesn't do you enough because they're just not connected. It's hard to see everywhere, but the problem is there for sure. And it'll ruin your footage. So at high speed, the bloop really can be fine, but at low speeds with live action, cannot rely on a bloop. It's just not enough to get the job done. And if you guys can't really make it out, it's just on that stand there. And the line is persistent as the video is going through. It's just very subtle, especially on such a small screen. But very, very, very important in order to make sure you're synced and get shots that work together. All right. So let's go back to see if we have any new questions. Owen had a question earlier that I was ignoring, so let's have a look. We haven't really built out any templates yet. Every shoot is so unique. So often we have a lot of conversations with the DP and sometimes the director, and we make sure we understand what they're trying to do, because even describing that proves to be challenging. If they have an animatic, that really does help us. But then from there, we try and flag all the problems. So before we go on to shoot, we want to make sure we're covering things that even they're not thinking about. People say, oh, it's going to be easy. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about that. And then we get onto set and they're asking so much and they don't realize it because they don't understand they need to be synced, or they don't, they're missing a cable, or they're missing power. There's a lot of things to go over. I feel like if we were to put together a sort of pamphlet or something, it'd probably be so long. And honestly, it would take so much of my time to prepare it. Every shoot is so unique. It can be really, really challenging. Thank you for the question. Hopefully that answers it. So, where are we now? We've seen our little rock, paper, scissors video. I'll play that back one more time, actually, just so that everyone gets a... Whoop, comments off. Good appreciation for it. So here we go. Again, this is 3 shots. We ended up not using the clean pass. We just didn't need it, but it's very important that we shoot a clean pass before, during, and after we shoot these scenes. And as far as the final clip, like it really is just seamless. The camera's moving in space. I guess the frame rate looks like it's a little bit choppy in this stream, but if you want, have a click on the link, and you'll see the video in its entirety. Again, you can download the actual raw clips. Good job, Mike. You beat Mike. It really makes a big difference, Moco versus not. You know, stuff like this can be done on a tripod, no problem. But if you're talking about moving through space, then it's a whole different world. All right, so we've gone over a lot of what I was hoping to go over. If there are any questions, now is a really good time that are specific to multipass. In the coming few weeks, we're going to go over a number of other details, things like scaling, which I'm really excited about. Scaling is an ability both of these machines have that is incredibly powerful. But for now, in talking about multipass, we're also open to shoot something off the cuff. If anybody wants to guide us through, maybe if it's someone we know, we can get on a call, or if not, just in the comments, let us know what you want to see. We'll move this thing around. We'll do something, you know, unscripted, and really show you guys what this thing can do and how quickly it can be done, or conversely, how slowly it can be done. But in the meantime, I'll just continue to try and field any questions. Got another question here from Justin. So, Justin, thank you for the question. That's a really tough question to answer, actually. So, the reason why is these moves can take so long or so little, depending on how complicated they are, and depending on how dynamic the action might be as well. I usually tell people about 15 minutes to an hour, depending on what we're shooting. And if I have no idea, then I might say even an hour and a half or 2 hours, because I don't want to put myself in any kind of jeopardy. But these moves can take really little time. If somebody wants to suggest, Justin, if you want, suggest something for us, we can do something really basic. I'll go back to the view of the room here. Let us know what you want us to do, and we can try and shoot something and get a sense of how long it takes to program, because it's a great question, and it's something that I wish all of my clients really knew, is how long programming takes. Another question from Josh. Basically, essentially, yeah, right? Because, so the question is, are we syncing the shutter? I mean, we're syncing the frame rate, and essentially if you're, you know, whenever the shutter opens, if it was a film camera, whenever that shutter would begin to open again, that's when the bolt moves. It's always on a new frame. So you're never going to go halfway through a frame. You're never going to go a quarter of the way through a frame. It's essentially syncing shutter, I believe. Good question, Josh. You're very, very welcome. Please feel free to, you know, suggest any kind of moves you guys want to see. In the meantime, maybe I can start moving this thing around just for fun, but I'd really love to see anybody have any suggestions. We'll shoot something really quick. I want to give you guys a sense of what it takes to actually get this thing going. I'll give you guys, oh, I can't give you both views, can I? I'll give you guys a sense of the Flare software when I get closer to actually programming a new move. I'll open up a new file here. And maybe set a first position, but I'll wait to see if anybody has any suggestions. Got this thing moving. It's a slow robot, but it does the job. It can go a little faster, actually. So that's what we're looking at. Why don't we pan over to something? I'm actually using this, it's called an HHB. Oh, you can't see it because I'm not on picture-in-picture. There we go. I'm using this HHB to control it right now. It's basically a series of joysticks and knobs and buttons and things, but it allows me to kind of position this thing pretty quickly. Even then, because I can position it quickly, it still takes quite a while for me to program any kind of move, just based on all the different details we need to get. You know, the director wants to have something here or something there, and it gets really complicated really quickly. But why don't we program a move in here. Start by focusing on this milk crate, if I can. That looks like it's in focus there. Oh, we got a submission here, hypothetical simple move. Let's see what it says. Dolly towards couch from cushion level, then move overhead top down over the couch. Okay. All right. Sure. Let's do it. I might not interpret exactly what you said, but that's at least some direction. I will also just preface that right now with the setup I have, I won't be able to go completely top down. That's not because the Milo can't. It's just because a couple of settings need to be changed, and frankly, for the sake of the live stream, I won't do it. But what I will do is sort of what you asked and go almost top down. Okay, so let me read that one more time. Hypothetical simple move. Dolly towards couch from cushion level, then move over. Okay, let's do that. So we're gonna move this thing. Gonna get this base of the track out here. See how long it takes to move any of these things. Oh, I moved too far. So you can have a look. What I got here is an error. I've moved too far on my extend axis. So I'll have to turn that back on. I'll bring it in a bit. And go back here. Just do that one more time. All right, so we're going to dolly in from about this level. We're just going to dolly straight in to the couch. Get that in focus first. There we go, and I'll set a position here. And then we will put in a second point very shortly. So we're just going to go straight in. Okay, another error. So again, I've had an error here. We've gone out of position. Same thing. Now, this time we didn't actually go out of position, so I don't know what the problem there is, but I'll have to turn that access back on. I might have gone too fast. That is probably what happened. I am at too fast a speed, I think. So I'll just lower the speed there and go back one more time. All right, so I'll bring the track back a bit. Bring this in a bit tighter and get focus point here. Oftentimes we do our focus pass completely after we do the move because, especially with talent, things change. And I'm going to add a position and add a point. And then we'll program one more move where we go kind of up and over. So we're going to lift this thing up. Bring the track back. Lift it up some more, as much as we can. And it's worth noting that this can actually rise up considerably higher. Again, I don't have the settings for that locked in just yet. But the arm that you see in the sort of top part, that little thing that holds the gimbal, can actually go completely inverted. We get like another 5 feet out of that. So we're just going top down as much as we can here before I get an error. And we'll stay on that milk crate. So that's a move, really basic, really quick. I'll just get a focus point here one more time. And set that point. Great. All right. So looking at our software, one thing I do is check to see if the move's going to work. Right now, I get a lot of errors. So this move is simply not going to work. And what I'll do is I'll run through it in this rig model and I'll try and find out why. What are the errors? This is a good way. It usually highlights the problems. So looks like there I got a problem. I go too low, I think. So I'll fix that by changing some of these. Are the target view of what I'm looking at. And I can edit these points without editing where things are necessarily. And that alone might have done it. So we'll check that again. Now it runs. Great. It can run even faster. That was an easy fix. But we're going to make this a little slower just so that we don't exacerbate the machine too much. Check it again. Everything looks like it's going to run. So give you guys that view again. And we'll run this one time. I'm not going to record it because I don't want to burn data. But we will go to our first position. And run this move. This is a really basic move with very little direction from our, our client. Actually, I'll just make one adjustment here. So please consider that this is quick, relatively, but it's normally not as fast as this. We usually have a lot more discussion with terms of art and direction and timing and everything. But we'll shoot this right now. Now you'll see that we lost the milk crate completely. That was really not very pleasant, not really what we were hoping for. So what that means is that our targets were a little bit off, and these distances are probably the factor in that. And so what we'll do is we'll go back to this view, and we'll make sure that our targets are all in the same place, and that's this red line here. So I'm just going to actually edit this with my mouse because it's the easiest way. And I'll put these targets all in the same area, and we'll go back. And we'll shoot that one more time. I'm actually just going to back run it because we're already in our final position. So going to our last position here. Oh, that's our new last position since I made the change, but we'll run it anyway. And you'll see we'll be much more consistent. So this still wouldn't be the final shot, but that was a lot better just by adjusting those targets. So you can see how this process is. We go back and forth fairly often and make sure that we get as the director wants, or it's not as easy as just typing it and pointing things. So one more time, I might want to adjust these. Looked like we were too low at the end, so I'm going to move these all really to be as close to each other as possible. And we'll play this one forward. And hopefully here we have a shot that stays on the milk crate as it moves. There's more than one way to do this. You can measure these with a tape. I'm by myself here. Looks like we both panned and tilted a little bit oddly. So from here, the last thing I'll do to make this perfect, it would be to edit each individual point. And I can do that really quickly. Oh. Spoke too soon. And I'll go to my second point and I'll edit that one too. And this will be probably the last step I take, but after I save that point, after editing those, I hope you guys get a sense of the time it takes to set up a shot. Again, I wouldn't say this is completely done, but certainly you've experienced some of the joys of working with Moco. still have it a little bit off, but yeah, it's quite the process. It's definitely a challenge working with this sort of equipment, but when you get more experience with it, you're able to really figure out how to solve these problems on the fly. Great question. Okay. As far as the cost goes, it really varies, I think, depending on where you are. I mean, here in Toronto, we charge about $4,000 for these machines, either the Bolt or the Milo. They cost the same, but then there's also labor and travel and setup and other factors. So I would say that a basic shooting day ends up, for just the robot and the operators, usually costing around $7,000 or so Canadian. As far as time, it can really vary. So Raymond Ban, my assistant operator, who helps me on most of my jobs, he's not here right now. I hope he's doing well. He and I have worked out quite the workflow, and we're able to set up the bolts on track in about an hour and a half. We usually tell our clients 3 hours because there's often bad access or power or something that's really not our fault that we're waiting on. If we don't have power, well, the bolt's not set up. So we say 3 hours, but in actuality, it takes us about an hour and a half. The Milo is about the same. It's actually easier to set up, but it's bigger, so wielding it around is a little bit more work, and there's more steps to setting it up as well. You have to add on little jacks, but overall, for both machines, it's about an hour and a half, and then we say 3 hours. Inevitably, we take up that whole 3 hours. It flies by, so it ends up being really important. We got a comment from Justin saying that we nailed it. I'm glad you're happy. Okay, we'll send you the bill soon. All right, so we've gone over a lot of things. I think we're about to wrap this up. Next week we'll be covering scaling. Again, I mentioned it briefly, but what that means is really using the Milo or the bolts to shoot something and then reshoot it, the same move, either in a different location, a different position, or a different size, or all three. So what you can do with that is, you could have somebody walk on the ceiling. You could have somebody really tiny on a tabletop. And probably what we're going to try and do, I'm going to try this week, is get my dog Watson to walk across a chessboard. And you'll see that hopefully next week. We'll try and execute it live as well. But scaling is a challenge, and it's really exciting. It's a really powerful tool. There's basic ways of using it, advanced ways, and each of them can be so tremendously valuable. We've got smash that like button. Thank you, Angel. I'm not going to go through the whole spiel, but I appreciate it, Angel. The last thing is we're going to give away a hoodie. So for anybody who can answer a question, we're going to send you a hoodie. And Mike, you want to model the hoodie for us?
Sure.
Mike's going to model one of our hoodies.
On what camera?
Go to that camera over there on the doorway dolly. Mike will be our model here. We're going to give away one of these hoodies. I'm going to ask a question, and we're going to choose randomly from the answers in the comments that...
Good.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Close enough. So there's Mike. Mike, give us a turn, Mike. There you go. So that's one of our 2D hoodies. And the question is this: what is not a very important factor in motion control? And the options are A, lighting, B, camera sync, C, art or subject, or D, audio. And so out of all the correct answers, we're going to choose one at random, and we're going to send you guys a hoodie. This has been fairly fun, although terrifying at the same time for me, so I appreciate everyone staying with us and being here. Okay, Mike, you're gone. Thank you. If there's any topics you want to cover, or we missed anything, then let us know, and we'll try and answer them in the next one, or I might answer in the comments. Yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike, for helping us out. Watson really didn't do anything, but he's here too, and he says thank you. We'll see you guys next week, and